Hello, Rebecca. We're going to take a look at your aesthetics and control, as well as your sun as key here. All right. First, obviously, we take a look at, how complete everything is and technique, and basically if everything sort of is there. Exposures are a little bit here and there on these. We'll get into that, talk about that a little bit. Here we have the how deep, which is the aperture, which is the depth of field experiment. Those are all there, your exposures, and then you know better. Okay, so you've got all of the components there for this one. So let's start taking a look at these. So the hold or not to hold is kind of a two-part. It's first, of course, to help you get to know the shutter speed control, where the control is, to help you understand the threshold of how to hold the camera, that kind of thing. So it's that part first. The second part is the aesthetics of it. So it's the aesthetics and control, the controls of the camera, which is the dial and where the settings are and how you hold the camera. And then the aesthetics of like what the image looks like based on what settings you put on there. And so at 1,000th of a second, what does that mean? It's hard to pre-visualize that, to say 1,000th of a second. Something happening 1,000 times every second can be very difficult. Can be very difficult to like think about. So what does it look like? It looks like something that is stopping very quickly. And so it serves us to have things that are moving very quickly in the image, to be able to explore that, to making images that are going that fast. Otherwise, we don't need it to be that fast. We can certainly hold the camera at slower shutter speeds, give the camera more time. And so the advantage to having 1,000th would be when things are moving, like water's splashing and we want to capture that beautiful thing, or something's falling. And that's what most people were doing in these images. And so here we are, you're right over the top here, kind of getting into it. You can see by the first image that we have a lot of a contrast going on here. And what that tells me is that we needed to diffuse this light. Or we needed to have a reflector over here. At 1,000th of a second, you probably needed a lot of light. In other words, you needed it nice and bright. So you couldn't have diffused this. And so what that meant is, in order to get a balance, you would have needed to get more light over on this side for it not to be so harsh in contrast. So compositionally, I think it looks kind of cool, what you're doing here right over the top. You got this sort of organization that's happening. This little blip over here, you probably didn't even see that in your frame. That's not helping. If you put your hand over that while you're watching this video, kind of put your hand over it, you'll see that it when you get rid of that little moment, it helps pull your eye right back into the composition. Small things like this are what we wind up doing later in the editing process. Now you're getting into what we're doing. You start to get into the drop movement and things like that. Again, looking at the overall composition, what is serving us, what is not serving us. The contrast here is less troublesome, I think, than it is in the first one, only because you've got this exaggerated movement, and so the exaggerated lighting almost kind of aesthetically works with this sort of harshness that you've got going on. I still think we've got a bit of a harsh light happening here that we could have done maybe with a larger light, meaning two lights that are farther back that kind of give you the same amount of intensity, brightness, but without as much harshness that's happening. With a little bit of a background object here that you probably didn't want to have in there, but this is definitely movement, and this is not 1,000th of a second. This would have not happened at 1,000th of a second. So I'm not sure you're identifying it 1,000th though. Let's see. Are you identifying this at 1,000th? Yeah, this isn't 1,000th of a second. So I know you may not have done the notes or whatever, but this wouldn't be 1,000th. 1,000th of a second would have captured that perfectly. unless this was moving at light speed, this would have been more like probably half a second, or maybe the eighth of a second, or something like that. The eighth of a second, that you're getting into where you can probably still hold the camera and keep things relatively steady, but maybe some of the stuff is a little bit shaky. It's where your movement is more of a consequence than anything else. And so you're trying to figure out how to exactly hold that. One tip, and I showed a few people, I don't recall if I showed that to you guys as well in your group, but by holding the camera a little bit lower instead of up here, holding the camera at chest level, notice what's happening to my shoulders. It forms a triangle. It helps you to keep it a little bit more steady, holding it at keeping your arms at a triangle. Up here, your elbows are kind of like bouncing a little bit more, which is good if you're moving and to try to keep the camera steady if you're trying to move around. But with the camera down here and you're trying to keep things steady, that's a really good. You're kind of creating a tripod for yourself. So that's one tip on how to keep yourself more steady here. You're really kind of playing around here, I think, trying to capture movement more than looking at the overall composition and the dynamics of the shapes. And that happens typically when you get into some of these other things, is we start to focus on the particular thing we're studying, which here is movement and shutter speed. And some of the things that get away from us is the lighting. Now, I recall you saying that you lost a bunch of images, and I'm not sure if this was your trying to get to recover those. So this might be the case where you were quickly trying to make some images to fill in. That might be the case. So if it is, we'll chat about that and kind of work back. This is kind of a cool image, an interesting take, because here we're not really kind of apologizing, or you're not really trying to make excuses for it being slightly out of focus. There's a sort of texture and energy and quality of light that's, I think, appropriate to the movement that's happening here. The energy is kind of pulling down. It really feels like an avalanche, or feels like there's this grit that's going on here that really works. Now we're getting into some real movement here. I'm going to guess that we're into the half a seconds here. Yeah. This is where you really are just having to go full on, just, okay, accept it's moving and create the abstractions that happen because of that. And these become pure formal abstractions. This is beautiful. To me, this is a beautiful, abstract light painting, basically what this happens to be, Rebecca. And here, the harshness of the light, the quality of the light, disappears altogether. We don't have any presumptions about what things should or shouldn't be. It does get a little bit bright over here. We would like a little bit of tone, but wow, this is just gorgeous. Imagine this at a huge size, and just this sort of fog going on with these subtle variations of color. Extraordinary. Photography can be this. Photography can be something other than objects. I mean, look at this. This is just fascinating to me. And I love when photographers first discover this stuff, because it's just another world of photography that you never knew was possible. And hopefully you've discovered that in these images. I'm very proud of students when they find this and then they embrace this. This is hard to accept sometimes, imagery like this, but this is really a huge step forward in and seeing photography for what it is, and then taking this back to more traditional standard photography, these ideas into standard photography. It's sort of a new way to look at the language. And so don't disregard this as just a kind of a one-off thing. I really want all the students to sort of take this experience of the movement and go with it. Now we're getting into some of these others where looks like we're doing, what is this? We should be getting into now the depth of field. Let's see, eighth of a second, two, I'm not sure. How deep? Here we are. How deep? That's what we were looking for. Now, how deep? These are going to be the depth of field experiments. Now, it looks like this might have very well been the one where you lost, because what this should look like, and if you go into some of the other postings for the students, you'll see what that is. it should look like the same photograph. So you set up the still life with the 3 zones, and then you have your camera on a tripod, and you set it up, and you make the first image at the whatever your aperture can be, whatever the f-stop can be, wide open. You have the camera set on aperture priority, or the A setting, and you have that on wide open, and you make the first image. And then you start moving the aperture down, 1, 2, 3 to the next one, click, 1, 2, 3 to the next one, click, and you're making the hole smaller each time and making repeat images over and over. And what you should see as a result is something that looks like the same photograph over and over. However, the depth of field should be increasing as you go. And so the things that are in focus should be gradually getting more and more in focus, forward and backward. And that's all it is. It's just meant to kind of immerse you and introduce you to this concept of depth of field. That's all it is. It's a very scientific, like, set it up, explore this technique, explore what it looks like, so you guys have a visual of what that looks like. So it just looks like you set it up in a slightly incorrect way here, and we can recover that, no problem. I'll help you with that later on if you need to. Equivalent exposures as well. These should be the same exposures, same image, but we want to identify the exposures being equivalent. Again, what we're trying to do here is use different combinations in manual setting. So you have your shutter speed control and you have your aperture control now independent. You can control both of them now. And I wanted you to kind of explore the possibilities of having one setting and then being able to move both of the controls to choose a customized second setting. In other words, choose a different setting altogether with the 2 different controls, so that now you're really fine-tuning your imagery. This was a difficult one to do, and not everybody got it, and it takes several tries, and so that's why we do it, is to experiment with it and to do it again and again. None of these experiments are meant to make you like a master of the technique. It's really meant to introduce you to it and to hopefully help you kind of move forward. So all of these things we can work on and help you improve on. And so then we have the you know better, and that's where you just basically get to explore. What I wanted everyone to do was to just take all of the things that we've been working on, all of the techniques, and just kind of work out some things that seem to be visually unique to themselves, like what they feel like their unique vision can be with them. And this image is quite beautiful. I really am interested in how you are dealing with the shadows down here, these sort of multiple planes where you've got these layers going on, this horizontal line where these things happening up here. This is just exquisite lighting, which is what the class is all about, which is identifying exactly what we're looking for. You know, things like this where you're so delicately allowing light just basically caress the subject. This is absolutely what we're looking for. Now, you know, subjects aside and what else you can do to communicate your ideas, that's something that will come through time and come through multiple years of work. But just the idea that you are taking these concepts of the key light and reflectors and using quality of light to your advantage, that's what we're really looking for. Here it gets away from you a little bit. You know, the light got too bright on you. We want to use those camera controls to get control of that so it doesn't get blown out like this. I want you to be able to identify that and go, nope, that's not acceptable for me. Again, I do understand you had some image loss, and so these may be fillers for you. But I think overall, I mean, you have some really exciting things happening on this one. And even though you have some things probably to redo on this, I'm encouraged with the progress that you've made here. So let's take a look at your sun as the key posting here. Here we are, sun as the key. Now, this one is kind of an intermediate. project where I had everybody, of course, go out and make images using the sun in teams, and then you did your images in shade. I'm seeing this is probably the one that you missed on. So, I'm going to go ahead and just reserve the feedback. That way you don't have to hear me talk about, what's not working or whatever the exposure. So, what's going on here is here nor there. I appreciate you putting the posting up there. That's a good job to do that. I think it's really heads up for you to go, well, I lost the thing. That happens. Don't worry about it. That's why I do the resubmissions. I'm not here to make things difficult. I'm here to help you guys learn the stuff. So that's why I have the resubmission thing. That's why I want to make sure that you guys have every opportunity to succeed, and allow you the freedom to have things not work. I've gone through all of these things myself, so I know that they're not easy. And though it's been years since I have had to integrate myself into these projects, I still have a fond memory of going through them. And I say fond memory because even though they were difficult, I enjoyed the process of learning, and it looks like you're enjoying the learning process too, even though you've had some ups and downs camera wise and so on. So we'll work on getting those resubmissions done for you and get you past the little hurdles that you had technology wise. So I look forward to seeing your other images, and we will talk more in class. All right, bye now.